Oh, listen to that high-pass filter. Hi, I'm Stephen Fortner, editor of Keyboard Magazine, with a pre-Music Messa kickoff preview. The first place you will see Roland's new synthesizer, the Jupiter-50. This is the more portable, affordable little brother to the Jupiter-80, which we reviewed last year. And it's really sort of appropriate because the Jupiter-8, which was about $5 grand in 1981 dollars, eventually spawned the Jupiter-6, which was its more portable, affordable little brother. This is heavy enough to feel substantial, like you're not going to knock it off the keyboard stand, but really light enough to be easily carryable under one arm to the gig. I think it's, I haven't weighed it, they haven't given me a spec, but I think it's about 25 pounds. Architecture is very similar to the Jupiter-80, except for the fact that you have half the polyphony and not quite as many polytimbral parts. I'm going to show you the parts right now. You have a lower part that can switch over to being a percussion part. And you have an upper part, and what I'm doing with these backlit buttons that you can see right now is muting and unmuting the parts. If it's lit, it's active. The upper part's where most of your action is. You can sort of think of it as your main part. And that part, unlike the other two, contains something called a live set, which in turn contains 4 of what Roland calls tones and what a lot of us call single sound programs. So your upper part can have 4 assignments in it, each with their own key mapping, splitting, and layering assignments. And then on top of that, you've got your solo tune, and you can see this little arrow that my right index finger is pointing to is where your default solo split point is, although you can change that. You can change any of the multiple split points on the keyboard, by the way, by holding down a split button and striking a key, which is, in my opinion, the only way anyone should have to do it. So, you know, with all of these parts active, you've got quite a lot of sound here. If I go to just my solo part, I've got nothing. Oh, there it is. It's got a slow attack envelope. Almost a Mellotron-y sound. My upper part is a huge, splatty synth brass. And my lower part here is actually a percussion part. And it's, oh, we know what that sound is, don't we? I've got a fever, and the only prescription is TR-808 cowbell. There it is. And you can switch that over. You can have percussion and lower at once. That's one of the limitations compared to the Jupiter-50. You can have percussion or lower. I just switched over to the lower tone, which is a really nice electric bass. The synth and electric and acoustic basses on this are all just, they're really expressive without having too much of that fake popcorn slap that just screams bass on a keyboard. So a lot like the Jupiter-80, this is kind of in multi-mode all the time, but they've made it a little easier than the Jupiter-80 to get out of multi-mode. Here is a manual button, and look, if you're like me, Joe keyboard player, and you encounter this for the first time in Guitar Center or wherever you encounter it, the first thing you want to do is not necessarily, oh, I want to play some huge layer that just blows my hair back. Well, not my hair. I don't have any. But the first thing you want to do is not that. It's often, hey, I want to hear the cool electric piano sound. I want to hear the cool clav sound. And on the Jupiter-80, you kind of had to drill down a couple layers through the touchscreen and the user interface to do that, although then you could set up a one-button situation to toggle to a single sound program. On this, they've added the manual button. You hit the manual button, and notice what happened. I'm going to toggle it off. I'll toggle it off by hitting a registration there. I'll enable all of my parts. So I've got something huge, and it's called Chainsaw. This sounds dubsteppy and huge, yep. If I hit the manual button now, look what just happened. The percussion lower and solo parts went off, so I'm just in my upper part. And my upper part is a supernatural piano. So I just want to hear a darn piano sound. Now they made a really easy way for you to do that. You hit the manual button. And it is, the same supernatural piano that you'd hear in some other higher-end digital pianos. Another cool thing about this is, let's say I hit the electric piano button and I go over to a suitcase sound. I'm just full of major seventh chords today. I don't know what it is. Hit the electric piano button or any of these jolly candy-like sound buttons again, one more time, and you get a list. And then you can spin on through the list. So if I want a more whirly-like sound instead of a Rhodes-like sound, I've got it. I can dial down to the clavinets, and there's some bad clavs in this, and by bad, of course, I mean good. You can see on the screen here, CB, CA, CB, CA. Those refer to ways the original rocker switches on a real clavinet might have been set. There were rocker switches that kicked the pickups in and out, or could even put the pickups out of phase with one another for a more nasal sound. And yes, I'm just playing blues scale riffs because otherwise I'm going to play something copyrighted and get us all in trouble. Different ways the clavinet might have sounded. With the brilliant switch on. Because in addition to the pickup switches, the clavinet had rocker switches that cut in and out different levels of filtering and EQ. This was the brilliant one. Clav sounds great, and you have, of course, the fade. And as I'm just, doing what you do when you go into the music store, right? I'm freaking out and stepping through sounds. One thing I notice about this is that often when you talk about the little brother or little sister of a flagship keyboard, there's a downgrade in sound quality. They're using a cheaper analog output stage. They're using cheaper digital to analog converters. Not here. This sounds every bit as huge as the Jupiter-80 does, and it's a really smooth. The D to A's are so smooth on it that, if I go to something like a synth sound, synth string. Let's go to JP strings 1. I mean, you don't hear what I often call the carbonation, the fizz in an obviously digital sound, in a PCM-based or a modeling-based sound that, where you can almost kind of hear the code being calculated, or maybe that's just if you're really obsessive like I am. And at any rate, I don't hear that in this instrument. They're really smooth, big, spacious, detailed-sounding D to A's in this machine. So if they didn't cut corners there, I know you don't just want me to gush over this thing, and that's not my job. So I will tell you where they did cut corners. Display is monochrome and not a touchscreen. On the Jupiter-80, it is a touchscreen. So you could do things like on the Jupiter-80 touchscreen, like organ drawbars. You can still do that on here, and it does have the full-on VK-style clone wheel organ in it, but you access it in a different way. We'll get to that in a later clip. Again, half the polyphony, one less live set than on the Jupiter-80. On the Jupiter-80, the upper and lower parts are both live sets. Here, just the upper part. And a bottom part that can be percussion or lower, but not both at the same time. Other than that, pretty much you're getting all of the sound quality of the 80. There are some minor compromises in construction materials. These are polished plastic end bells on it, the cheek blocks, as some people call them, as opposed to the Jupiter 8 style aluminum ones on the 80. And the rail underneath the keys and the undersurface of the Jupiter-50 is plastic as well. This, however, is still really nice brushed aluminum. There's still a real sense of quality and heft to this thing, but of course, what slightly more plastic and a more compact size gets you on this machine is it's easier to carry. It's easier to fit in a case. Like I said, you can carry it under one arm. It can be an audio interface. It can be an audio interface for your computer. So that's a cool thing. But at this point, have exhausted the knowledge I can spin off the top of my head without notes. So in subsequent clips, I'm going to be inviting in category marketing manager Ed Diaz and product specialist Scott Tibbs, who've done a lot of work in the sound design and development of this keyboard and are going to get us into some of the deeper aspects of the feature set. So stay tuned for more.